Okay, here we go. Hi, folks. My name is Dave Stokes. I'm a technology evangelist for Percona, and I have Bartek with me, who's kind of the king of MySQL at Percona. This is the first of a series of videos we want to do, short and sweet, on the status of what's going on with databases at Percona. The great thing is that we're doing a lot. The bad thing is we don't really talk about it enough to get a lot of notice. So we're going to talk real quickly about the three database products, specifically more on MySQL. And let's start quickly. Currently, MySQL is our latest release is 8.0. 8.4 came out not that long ago, and we're working on that. And it has some big changes in it, doesn't it?
Yes, it is. Before I bite into this, just wanted a small correction. I'm not a king. I'm just a group product manager at Percona. My role is to make sure that our investments in MySQL go in the right direction. But yes, 8.4 has just recently been released by Oracle. We are currently working on Percona version 8.4 as well. We plan to have it released sometime at the end of the second quarter. But yes, it is the first new long-term support release after a series of innovation releases. So for those of you who don't remember, I'm just going to do a super quick recap. In June last year, Oracle announced that they are changing a little bit the cadence with which they are releasing MySQL. So 8.0 starting in fall that year is becoming the new long-term support release. And at the same time, in parallel, they are going to release 4 innovation releases, 8.1, 8.2, 8.3, and 8.4, the last of which, 8.4, is becoming the new long-term support release for another couple of years. So right now, as of today, we have 2 long-term support releases. We have 8.0, with the latest release from Percona being 8.036, and we have 8.4, which we are still working on our site, but it's already available for community edition from Oracle.
Yeah, and a quick interruption here. We also offer 5.7 support for those of you who really need it. So please continue.
Yes, and it's the main change in this approach that Oracle has announced is that they address the criticism that they have received for earlier versions of 8.0, which were quite often quite major jumps between minor versions of 8.0. So not only they introduced new functionality that was potentially disrupting the applications, but it also made it quite difficult to roll some of those minor upgrades back. And that's why they have introduced this new system where now 8.0 is basically just a bug fix release. And consequently, there are no super large changes within the data structure, nothing that should break your application, basically. And similar thing is going to happen with 8.4.0 and then .1, .2, and so on, as it becomes the next long-term support release with just bug fixes. The innovation releases are where new features and major changes are being added, and they are still relatively disruptive, if you can say that. They introduce multiple changes to the core of the database, but this is where you have a slightly better control over what is and how you roll it out without the sacrifice of being up to speed with the critical features of the system.
Cool. Now, the reason it takes us a while or you to roll out a new version is that we put in a lot of enterprise features or all the enterprise features that you get in the very expensive enterprise version of Oracle's MySQL, like connection pooling, data masking, RocksDB, and all that. And to integrate that code and test it to make sure that it's absolutely as perfect as we can get it takes a lot of time.
Yes, it does, and we are actually very proud of being able to offer enter enterprise grade MySQL as open source for everyone to use, without any strings attached, without any traps waiting for the users. And yes, indeed, it means that every time Oracle releases the new version of the Community Edition, it takes us a while to incorporate these changes into our release to make sure that all the plugins continue to work, and also that the new plugins, new advancements are introduced at the same time. The benefit that I wanted really quickly to mention here is that we retain the same numbering of versions, not because because it's fancy, but because those versions are actually very easy to jump on if you are using a community edition of MySQL. So they are, as we call them, just drop-in replacements. If you are running 8036 of community edition, you can just drop 8036 from Percona and it will start working right away without any issues. So yes, it takes us a while to provide to this message, to this promise, but it's absolutely worth it because with Percona you get all the wealth of enterprise features for free.
Yeah. Now, I have a little list here of things we're going through. We're working on MySQL enterprise encryption parity, or your team is. PXB reduction of lock time and ARM64 RPM and other packages in addition to Docker images. That's a lot of stuff beyond just what you get with the community edition. Can you talk a little about those and how we're doing?
Sure. Yes. So those topics that you brought up, Dave, they are actually mostly around this enterprise grade feature set. They maybe just going through them one by one. We have what we call a parity with Oracle Enterprise Edition when it comes to encryption. So this is more or less what it says, right? That all the encryption methods available in MySQL Enterprise Edition are going to be provided from Percona as well within our distribution. We have performance improvements in PXB related to the lock time specifically. So that means that the backup process is going to take less time. It's going to be faster. The tables will not be locked if that's not absolutely necessary. We also work on binary log streaming, which specifically is something that we aim to solve some of the impediments of point-in-time recovery, but it's also going to be extremely helpful in other situations. And then there is a number of operating systems, or actually architecture support investments. So, of course, we try to keep up with all the major releases of the major Linux operating systems, but we have additional effort in this case to make sure that our Percona MySQL with the associated tooling works really well on ARM architecture. Specifically, we started with Red Hat 8 and 9, but Debian is also coming shortly afterwards. So these are, deployment / enterprise grade features. There's also one thing that we are working on, and I think it's relatively important to mention this in context of 8.4 right now. So we have our own performance tests running for Percona edition of MySQL, and we also test the community edition. So after 8.4 was released, we realized that it seems to be relatively slower as compared to 8.0. This is probably not going to be a surprise for those of you who have seen the introduction of 8.0 on top of 5.7. We have witnessed performance degradation at that time, so that's probably not a surprise. But what I wanted to convey here is that as we are running these performance tests, we are also experimenting with some of the settings, and we seem to have there is hope that we will be able to limit the effect of the performance degradation of 8.0 within Percona distribution. So please keep your fingers crossed. This is a work in progress at the moment, but something that we have high hopes for. And essentially, the goal here is to not make the move towards 8.4 too big of a hassle.
Yeah.
I'm not speaking about the changes in the database. Of course, there are multiple different changes that anyone will have to take a closer look at. And we, with our professional services, we actually help with this as well, with the process. But in terms of the infrastructure preparation for the upgrade, the footprint of the, say, hardware demands, we know that it's very difficult to plan if you need to reorganize your whole environment, your whole database hardware or virtual hardware that you have provisioned for that. So the smaller the impact of this performance degradation, the better in this case.
Can you talk a little bit about our the Percona telemetry? What's going on? Why it's there? How it's there? How intrusive is it? Are we spying on them? What actually is going on there?
Hopefully it's not intrusive in a way that anyone notices this. So yeah, long story short, we need the data within Percona to make good product, good data-driven, educated decisions, where to invest, what are the most popular elements of our databases. So several months ago, we have introduced telemetry into all three of our database engines, MySQL, Postgres, and MongoDB. And the telemetry itself collects anonymous statistical usage data that is then being sent to Percona. We have no idea who we got it from. All of that is completely obfuscated. We have no way of tracking it back to the source. The data doesn't contain any information that would allow us to interpret the data in the databases itself. So no proprietary information like database names, table names, nothing like that is collected. It's mostly about the versions of the operating system and the versions of the software itself. And in the future, this is actually something we are working on. We also want to collect the information about the plugins that are being enabled in case of MySQL. And as I said, this is something that will allow us to make better decisions with the product. Is it intrusive? If you do not do anything, it's just gonna work. You can always disable the telemetry. It doesn't collect, as I said, any proprietary information, nothing you should be worried about. We are absolutely open about the format of the data, what exactly is collected. So this is something that you can find in our documentation.
And the collector isn't running every 10 milliseconds to screw up your performance.
No. Actually, the telemetry is collected rather rarely. It's only once a day. There's a small kind of, keep alive process that collects the information. We don't collect anything that is very dynamically changing, right? So none of the kind of critical information, mostly, as I said, just the versions and the modules of the software. And yeah, as I said, it sends it over encrypted path to Percona, where we on our backend can then produce some statistical analysis of what is being used, how often the upgrades happen, etc., etc. So that makes it very valuable for us. And for those of you who have read a blog post that I have created a few months ago, I announced at that time that we will share some of this data back as the new version of telemetry is coming relatively soon. Please expect a new blog post where I will share some of the data that we have collected over the past few months, with hope that you will find it useful or at least intriguing, interesting to look at. So yeah, just a heads up.
And once again, if you want to turn it off, we have that documented on our website.
Yes, it's not very complicated to do as well.
And by the way, for those of you interested, PMM also will send us some telemetry. And what's real interesting is it looks like 5.7 is not going away. It looks like people are adding 8.0 and 8.4 to 5.7 because we have a graph where 5.7 is kind of staying nice and steady.
Yes, it is. It is interesting, and actually, it's the reason why we decided to run post end of life support program for 5.7. Seeing how much of 5.7 is still out there, its footprint is slowly going down, but it's still very strong. It's still very strong. It's around 40-ish% of the instances that we can see right now are on 5.7, and surprisingly, we see new installations. So it's not just the legacy deployments. We see people deploying 5.7 as new instances all the time, which is interesting. It speaks about, again, the difficulties of upgrading not just the database, but the application, the tooling, the automation from major version of MySQL to another major version. And as I said, we probably can expect similar difficulties with 8.0. We are there to help, of course.
Sure.
But yeah, that's an interesting observation that it's still very, very, very strong.
Well, let me touch the other two databases. We also have our own release of Mongo, which has enterprise features added onto it, 6.0 drop-in replacement. And it's coming up. There's a vector search capability in the community edition coming up, so that's kind of interesting. Also today, they announced the first beta of Postgres 17 being available. What's interesting there is following just about, well, MySQL, Oracle, SQL Server, and some other folks, JSON table functions in there. Merge has been improved. Usually every release of Postgres is a little bit faster than the previous version. The benchmarks haven't come out for that. Let's see. Replication has been added to the core. So those of you running PG Logical, you're going to find that's going to be faded out over time. And also for our news, there is our engineers in the Postgres lab. We're looking at, well, we're not looking, we're adding Citus. So if you need Citus's capability, we are doing that. Matter of fact, the folks who did Citus before now owned by Microsoft, the original folks are all gone, and we seem to have the experts in Citus, which is kind of exciting. Also, we're going to add timescale for those who have to do time data. And we're looking at supporting PG vector extensions. So those who are doing machine learning, that's a great way to save your data. If you're into machine learning, the great idea is you keep all your data on one database. You do your training on it, do it within a transaction. If you don't like the results, you can just roll it back. Keeping it all in one database, you don't have to move it off to a specialized vector database and bring it back, which is always slow and expensive. And I think I've hit all the highlights we want to do except for Percona Connect. If you go to percona.com/connect, in the month of June, a lot of us are going to be on the road. New York City, June 4th, Chicago, June 6th, Amsterdam, June 11th, Nashville, June 13th, San Jose, California, June 20th, Austin, June 25th. Very excited. It's free. Please come. A lot of good information on everything that Percona is doing. And if there's other places you want us to go or other information you want to know from that, please let us know. With that, Bartek, you got anything else that you want to cover? Or?
Just my general announcement that I always look forward to talking with the users, with the customers. If you have any feedback, please send it over. Probably the best selection is through our community forum. Please call me out by my name and I'll do my best to respond. And if you're adventurous, we can always have a video call as well to talk about some of the details. So yeah, that's it, I guess, from me.
Well, thank you, folks. This is supposed to be a quick and dirty wrap up of what we're doing. We'll try and do another one probably in July, bring us up to date. Hopefully we'll get a representative from the other databases. And with that, thank you, Bartek. Thank you, audience.
Thanks,
and
Dave.
we hope to see you on the road or hit us on the forum. Thank you.